Hello there, everybody. I'm Trevor, founder and CEO at CrowdTamers. With me today, I have Tomas, and we're talking today about a good CEO shouldn't be busy, something that my wife agrees with, even if I don't necessarily live that personally as well as I should. So, a couple of things I think worth pointing out here. You bring a very HR based experience on how to hire, how to build a company, how to scale, and I've done it a whole bunch. As whether it's founder or as a non-technical member, so I definitely have some opinions of my own on what makes sensible building and scaling. I think anybody who's listening on my network, I have a lot of founders who have got an early stage startup funded and they're looking at figuring out what do I do now that I've gotten my first investment check. And I think a really good first thing to think about, one of the main uses of that money is I'm going to hire people. I'm not just going to buy more MacBooks or whatever for my startup. And one of the key uses of that money is a good CEO shouldn't be busy. I think when you're busy as an entrepreneur or a business owner, you've got you've let yourself become too central. And the whole reason you build and hire a team is to give some room for the company to grow separate from you. If you're always the limiting factor in the delivery of something, it puts a complete blocker on your company's capacity to succeed. But I think one question is, as you're, a founder or part of a series of co-founders in a early stage startup that's funded, what do you do after you've got some money to hire strategically?
Good question, and you said it perfectly. You will become the bottleneck of your own company if you don't pay attention to that. So it's happens a lot that startup owners, they just end up running the moment they have money, and they end up hiring on their own. So it has one drawback before we get into the busy part, which is the aftermath of that they hire similar people than themselves, because that's the easiest logical thing. Who are they feeling comfortable with, and that will become a management team that is narrow. You need to have a 360 diverse management team. That means you need to hire people different than you, different thought process, and ideally different experience. Of course, that's the easy part, but the different thought process is the hard part. So usually a CEO who didn't work in HR or don't have a recruitment background have a hard time bridging that. I mean, it's kind of counterintuitive to hire a person who you understand the least, right? That's the effect. Oh, am I gonna hire the person who understand the most, or I hire the person who understand the least? And that's what usually an HR person can bridge and explain how this fits in. So CEOs end up building this network around them, kind of like a spider sitting in the middle of the net, that everything is around them. So they hire people that can do a certain task, a certain job, ideally better than them, but then they have to monitor that, and then they have to deal with that person. So guess what? Mathematically, you can only have 7 or 10 direct reports. Okay, if you're a female founder, maybe 10 to 15, because you're even multitask magic queen. But you get the point. Same problem. You will reach the bottleneck where you cannot have direct contact with that many people, and then you will choke your own company by not able to grow beyond this number, and you become a busy CEO. A busy CEO has time for no new stuff, who has time for no new strategic thinking, no new strategic conversation. And you try to just handle the workload, and you say, oh my God, I'm just super busy because I have this company. But you do this completely, in the wrong direction. It should be try to get the horses in front of the car and have the team work in front of you, and then you're looking out as a CEO to see what directions you should steer the team. So that requires a completely different approach. We'll get into details in a minute, but that's the a side effect, that you as a CEO will become busy because you built a team around you, and then you will immediately become the bottleneck. And when you're busy, it's really hard to grow.
Yeah, I am guilty of when I hire up teams in the past, I think more so than recently. I would hire a bunch of skilled individual contributors, and then I would still be final approval on everything.
Hmm.
And I think that a lot of founders do that, right? Where you say, "Well, look, I'm the expert in this company. I built it. Like, of course, I'm the expert in this company." But finding other people to take over part of the work, I can do, but I don't trust them enough to make judgment. I don't trust them enough to say X or Y and do it and not tell me. And I think one of the things I learned as I was building and growing teams is you want to have definitely the different personality types, right? As founders, like you and I are both founder types, right? We tend to be big in strategy and we'll do execution because you must. But
Minimal. Yes.
we do the minimal, and then somebody who really loves to to do something well and to do one thing really well and just knock it out of the park is a phenomenal, crucial hire, and not like me, right? And getting those people in the company is important to the success. You can't have a company of entirely top 1% performers because they will eventually go off and do something else on their own. You want to get a company with some of those top 1% performers, and then you want some people who, in their niche, are extraordinary performers, but maybe generalists aren't performing as well as one of your crazy high performers, and that's fine. And I think finding the pieces to put, right, identifying what type of job is this, how much autonomy is required, how much judgment do they have to exercise without me, is really part of when you build a job description. I know I'm guilty of this. I'm hiring for a role and I say, okay, I'm just going to go on to Indeed.com. I'm going to search for that job role. I'm going to find 2 or 3 resumes that are that job role and paste them together and be like, there you go, I wrote the job role. I can start hiring now. But like a lot of what you're missing is how the company actually takes that. Like your company is growing. How do you slowly digest this new role? How do you make sure that you're building a team where you're not the main blocker because you've equipped some people with independence? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I think the one word, good way of describing the problem is that looking at the decision making process. So if the person you hire keeps coming back to you to make the final decision on something, then you couldn't scale. You just basically created another leg, an extension of yourself. And as many as you did have, think of the spider web again, that you're in the middle of the spider web and everything depends on you. So you need to able to, as a CEO, ask the question right away. Is this person gonna able to decide without me? No? Well, then they didn't scale beyond the 7, 10, or maximum 15 people. You start have to break off the responsibilities that comes with the role, saying that it's not your decision, it's someone else's decision, and you actually can set a define of rules, at least some, that these decisions can be done without you, and maybe if it's a big decision, then you're involved again, but then it's a strategic conversation, not a tactical what to do today, what to do next week. So if on a day-to-day, week-to-week, and ideally in a month's basis, the person can make decisions without going to the CEO, then it's finally a proper adjustment of delegating responsibilities as well, and it's not just revolving around the CEO. So that's how you can actually look at it right away. Is this person going to be able to make decisions for a month about how to execute on this? That often consists of like assigning a weekly budget, for example, or a monthly budget. That's usually where you go up to the CEO with a financial request. Well, the moment you have budget, then you don't go, right? Then you basically kind of set certain ways of measure the work, which is much better. And then it is you as a CEO, you can see if the person is within those boundaries. So you can actually do that, but you do that either together or upfront, and start looking for someone who would feel your need for a task is not building a company. That's just take out that fire from your table. And again, that's not going to be strategic. So thought process that it starts with: what area I don't want to make decisions on, and have someone who actually likes making those decisions for you, and ideally motivated to make those decisions. And then that's why you start with peers. You kind of build as a management that is flat organization. Everybody has responsibilities, and I think that's where the real company culture building begins. Like, what kind of manager peers or C levels are you bringing in, part time or full time? Doesn't have to be, and that let them build the team. So then ultimately, what you do is clicking up the 7 to 10 direct reports to the next level, which is 7 to 10. We'll all have 7 to 10. So you're going to be about 50 to maybe 70 people in the organization where the next bottleneck is. But you can actually grow above 50 with the new scale, the new numbers that I just mentioned.
Yeah. So there is a framework I use at Crowd Tamers, and I stole from the CEO of the last company I was CMO at called Ulito, which is how reversible is your decision, right? How big a deal is it? Um, Let me just zoom in here on this if I can. Hey, there we go. This is the rubric I use, and he used, and now I use on how do you figure out how far away you can push the authority for a decision, right? If this is easily reversible and the impact is relatively low, just do it,
Hmm.
right? Because if it's easily
But
reversible, doesn't matter. If it's easily reversible and it's actually still a pretty big deal, like go up one level in the chain, right? Just tell your manager, hey, this is happening, right? The task owner or the area of responsibility owner. It's only once it gets hard to reverse the decision that you have to loop in more and more senior people. Now, this is for a company that was way bigger than, I mean, like this is, I think at the time we had like maybe 40 employees. And so you had enough layers of management where you had task owner who's doing the work, the area of responsibility owner who supervises like, I don't know, demand generation, the department head or head honcho, and then finally the CEO, like all these layers. But that's a really good way to say, as you're trying to not be the main blocker for your team, the more reversible an idea is, the fewer people should be involved in it. And what this isn't a substitute for is communication. And this is my internal company guide. But one of the ways I recommend we do this in my company, because we use Slack quite heavily, is just I'm doing a thing, right? Even if I'm equipped to make the decision, I still have to tell people that this thing is happening. So hit up on Slack. Hey, I did this thing. This is the, if you need to offer like a yes or a no feedback, you've got until here. Otherwise, good luck, right? Like if you have any problem with it, tell me after it's gone live. Doing something like that really does equip the team with agility to figure out what the process, figure out how fast they can move. And the more you empower your team to make these decisions, the faster your whole company goes.
that is a very good way to visually represent it, because it is exactly correct that people get hung up on decisions that is important to them, especially maybe emotional ones, that is totally reversible from a company point of view, and
Yeah.
it's a time waster. But one more thing came to my mind, which is related, which I think is a good best practice for every new CEO. That up until you reach a company size 100, you every time you double in size, you need to redo every operational process. It's pretty much a best
Yes.
practice. So if you think about it mathematically, that's going to happen probably 7 or 8 times. It's just the most frequent times it happens, because you scale to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, and 16, 30, and 6, and then 64, and then above 100. And it doesn't matter if you even start with 3 founders or 4 founders, you still gonna have to go through this many
A
times.
bunch.
So
Yeah.
every time you double, you redesign the workflow, the communication flow, the decision flow, everything in the company, that how the work is happens from an operational point of view. And that is the most frequent in a company's history ever. Like later on, that is less frequently, but in the first, I would say, few years up until 100, that is so frequent that it happens that you just redesign everything and you reach the bottleneck again.
And you do it
So
again.
you redesign everything, and then you reach the bottleneck again. And so that's and that comes down also to do proper onboarding with your new hires, because if there it's a chaotic process and they don't know how to they can contribute, that is also happening sooner that you reach a bottleneck. But that means one person, ideally from a founder team or a C-level team, should always spending half of their time just redesigning these processes, so that you're one step ahead of the curve. That's always going to be a bottleneck. It's kind of like if you didn't get enough funding, you're going to run out of money. This is just under the table right away. You're gonna reach this bottleneck very soon, very quickly, if you don't have anybody dealing with it constantly, optimize it. So that's a best practice that I would say. Just don't ignore the operational things, because that's gonna grow above your head, and then you just end up everybody being busy. So if the management meeting that you have, ideally weekly or bi-weekly, is end up being super busy, then that's a problem. And maybe one more thing on this: once you're more than 80% busy, you're not going to able to bring someone on board to save you. It's too late. It's like you run out of air already, even though you need air to bring someone on board, teach someone, assign the responsibilities. So the moment you're more than 80% busy, you're gonna get to the point of 100, and it's gonna you need 110% effort to try to bring someone.
Yes, that is almost every entrepreneur I know of when they reach that the first couple, right, and they go from like two to needing to hire up to four or six. That point is almost inevitably where the workload just gets insane,
Mhm.
and the founders burn out, right, because they're doing 80-hour weeks, and then they have to hire, and they're like, I'm already at 200% capacity. How the hell am I supposed to do this? And I think there's so I'm on Reddit a lot for content like generation and driving leads to my website and all those things. And there are some really common problems I see people keep cropping up on /r/entrepreneur and /r/startups, right? And those problems all factor in around scaling, all factor in around when I go from that one or two person, we just launched, to now we need to grow up. Like the main one, the number one I see, this is particularly true for almost every service business, right? So lawn care, housekeeping, gardening, uh, Airbnb, short term, like whatever, they all say nobody cares about my business as much as I do. And so their work is crap. And then their complaint is, kids these days, whatever, right? The millennials, which by now we're all you're in my age, but whatever. Millennials don't have a work ethic, or whatever their complaint is, right? You can't hire good people. And what's your answer to somebody who says nobody cares about the company like I do, so they don't produce good work? Because I think that's a bad way to look at it. But I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, that's just bad hiring decision, because I know that sounds cocky a little bit from a recruitment HR point of view, but you're supposed to be able to find better people than yourself, because the planet is big. So if you did a good job finding good people, then they will always surprise you how good they are. Not like they haven't done a good job as me, because you're looking in the wrong way, or looking at the wrong talent, or you try to fill a gap, and you try to have something in your mind that what you're looking for, and then you cannot find what you're looking for. But if you're looking at holistically, you recruit beyond it, find someone who is so much more experienced, and that person can fill up that void, that hole that you were trying to fill in an impressive way. So it's kind of like, maybe using an example from dating, hope I don't offend anyone. If you go and try to find your partner with a checklist that this is what I'm looking for, you're not going to find it. If you just go and try to look for someone that you're really feeling good, you realize that they checked off your checklist twice, because you end up falling for them. But if it's the same thing, like you can't envision that this is what I need someone for. You need to go beyond and recruit um, someone with a lot more experience, a lot more knowledge, and then bring that person back to the task level. How would you solve this task? And their answer will probably surprise you, like, oh my God, it's a much better solution than I ever could think of. Well, that's why you hire this person who is better than you in that field. So you're if you have, as a CEO, already got to this point of too busy, how can you get out? I think that's the good question. Like, how do you already have this problem? How do you get out? um, you need to put down everything that you do, and basically pick up strategically what you think is the most important, and try to hire a person better than you in that field, and then the next one, and then the next one, and the next one, and that will take probably a few months stop in your own business, because that's how much time it takes. And if you don't do that, you're just going to get crushed even more and burn out. So I really recommend, when you reach this 200% level, just stop for a second, and identify the number one priority and find someone. Talk to us. We will help you how to do that. Right? It's like one of the
That's
reasons why
true.
we talk about it.
You and I both have opinions, and we can help with that. Yeah. So one thing I think I see as a common problem when someone says um, nobody cares as much about the business as me is when you don't onboard people properly, you have a much lower opinion of their competence as a worker. And I think they end up having much less of an affinity for your company. And it feels weird. Like when it was just me working at Crowd Tamers all by myself, I had written up and had a 20-page company guideline document ready. And as I was doing all of the work that my business does, right, the agency work it does, where we buy ads and we make landing pages and we do this, I was already documenting all of these things as a training guide, even though it was just me. For a few reasons. One is because that's great content if you're making content marketing, right? A lot of my early blog posts are just me basically publishing a SOP for my business. But also, then when you bring somebody on board, I can easily say, look, I've carved out this part of what I do. You tackle this, it's already documented. And they can quickly onboard into this is what I need to do. And the importance of talking every day in a structured way with a new hire on here's what your goals should have been, here's what you should have had to show you how to do it. Did you understand everything? Are you confused by anything? And unblocking all of that for the first 30 days, which is a tremendous pain in the butt when you're already at 100% capacity, right? The first 90 days of any new hire, whoever's working with that new hire to train them has less capacity
Yes.
because they have to support the new hire. Eventually, you've now doubled up capacity. But those first 90 days, like as CEO, as founder, one of the hardest parts for hiring for me always was like, I'm going to have a month or two where I'm actually less effective because I've got this person until they've trained up to run independently, even with good training docs. So when people are talking about how you can't find good people, nobody wants to work, you have to hire five of me. Like when you say I have to hire five of me, what you mean is I'm crap at documenting because you, as one person, should not require somebody else with your exact skill set in your company. That's stupid. What you should do is find somebody with a piece of your skill set and hand it to them. And if things are documented correctly, you're able to handle that. But the last one I see a lot. Well, so here's one I'll throw real quick, which is I think tied to both of those. This is on /r/ small business today, and I think it's interesting because it speaks to a couple of the things you and I were talking about, which is why it came to my mind. This guy hires a VP of sales and says, um, "This guy has got 20 years of experience in a different industry. Hired a VP of sales. There's no marketing in place, and there's no other sales team in place."
Yeah.
And so he's like, "Did I make a mistake?" And I mean, everything about this looks like this poor VP of sales wasn't set up for success, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure, no sales documentation or training in the place. This guy, I think they mentioned somewhere, they're a digital agency. Oh, yeah, a digital ad agency. They've grown to 15 people in 4 years. So, like, they're clearly good at what they're doing, but, like, their ops team is real good. But the founder, I'm guessing, is trying to move away from founder-led sales into salesperson-led sales, which makes perfect sense. But if you have somebody who's not experienced in the business, isn't trained up on how to do it, and just get thrown in the deep end with a good luck, have fun, like you've given them a real tough spot, right? You said to somebody who, I mean, ideally, somebody with 20 years of experience in sales should probably know better than to take this job if things look as grim to me as they must look to this VP of sales. But I think it's an interesting case of you were talking, right? There's a checklist. And if you just check off the checklist and hire, you might end up with the wrong role. Like it may well be a sales director, or even just a really experienced SDR would have been phenomenal for this company because they're still used to keeping their hands on. A VP of sales from corporate, they probably haven't done a sales call in 5 years.
Yeah, this is actually a very good example, Trevor, because you think as a CEO that you want more sales, so you bring in someone senior. But initially, this starts with planning. So I can illustrate this with the way software developers lately starting to understand how to work together. If you want to build your product, you don't hire right away developers to start coding. That's not what you do. You have a designer, you create a roadmap, you create some sort of infrastructure, and then you start filling in the code with the code. That's exactly the same way with proper sales approach. You think of what your market is, you pair up with marketing, then you realize how you're gonna get there, create a little bit of infrastructure, and then you are looking at what kind of sales personality do you need for this role. So that means the salesperson comes at the end. If this VP took the job, then it should have been a little bit of a maybe chief revenue officer kind of role part-time for a month to create this structure, and then maybe the person can do the sales itself. But the big question is, once you know the type of clients that you go after, once you know the market you go after, and once you know what are the difficulties that you're going to have in the sales process, then you know, is this going to be a farmer salesperson, a qualifier, gonna be someone who needs to close a lot? Is this going to be more of a hunter? You don't know. It depends on really the type of role that you later on finally structured. So that is why I say you need strategic planning. No revenue going to come from the first months, and then you know what you go after. Then you kind of identify what kind of salesperson you need to execute with, and then having that as well if the senior person is maybe not enough to do it. So that's my take. You can't just say I hired a VP and this person's going to do it all, and I expect this much pipeline in 3 months. That's just going to
Yeah.
be really, really harsh.
A couple of the companies I have worked with as marketer have hired and then relatively quickly fired through several VPs of sales because they misunderstand what needs to be done, right? And that comes with product led companies. And this is another reason why you want to talk to an expert, someone like you, Tomas, is if I'm a product led person and I have a go to market problem, you talk to Trevor. Trevor helps. If I am a product led person, I have to figure out how come I can't keep good people. Right? That's the third common hiring problem is either I hire people who look good on paper and then they're bad and I fire them, or I hire people who seem to be decent but they quit. Right? What's going on here as a founder? Because that's another reason why CEOs get super busy. Right? Churn, whether it's employee churn or customer churn, is like sand eroding from the foundation under your house. Right? Everything collapses if the churn is too high. So if a CEO is seeing employee retention churn, either because they're firing or because they're quitting, what's going on here? What do they do?
Yeah, this is interesting because if you don't look at the dynamic between people, maybe you hire the good people, but they don't click and it creates a tension in the team, not effective. That is have an effect of people leaving. So that's why always say you need to look at the work dynamic as well. Is this going to be a good fit? And you can try to do that by checking with them afterwards to see how they feel, but not everybody's going to open up about their challenges. And that's actually, especially if you don't have an HR person who can like, hey, let's grab a lunch, let's grab a drink, and try to tell me what is bothering you or what's the bottleneck of your workplace. Is why are you cannot really work together very well with your colleagues. Now that's very hard now in a hybrid setup. In an office setup, that was often head of people's role to try to find out what can be done better. Now I think in the hybrid era or remote work era, you just need a tool. You need a tool for that to look at people's work dynamic. If you skip that, well, I'm sorry, shame on you. You just have to hope for pure luck to make sure that works out, and then or try to massage it and be your, you ended up as a CEO becoming feel like a project manager all the time. I need to tell massage people how to do things, and I need to make sure this person can work together with me very well, the other person can work together with me very well, but they cannot work together without me. That's like, Well, because that work dynamic was never looked at, how that two persons gonna work together, and that's how it should be optimized, not towards the CEO. So again, there are many tools out there. Of course, I recommend a couple of tools that is fast, like predictive index, which I use all the time. But there are many personality tools out there just to look at what is people's work behavior, and then looking at how they're gonna get along. Not how they're gonna get along with me as a CEO, how they're gonna along with themselves. And that's a different dynamic, and that's what drives productivity. The better the team, the happier, the better the match. The goal that you're looking for as a CEO, if they're inspired by each other, you did your best, right? If your team members are inspired by each other, working with each other is like the best team they ever worked in, you as a CEO suddenly can lean back and like, okay, that is definitely happening without me, or I don't have to be there, so I'm not going to become a busy CEO anymore, and finally this will evolve and grow. So, not looking at this personality as a number one mistake, try to iron it will create just more busyness, but naturally just evolves around a CEO person, not between the two people. So that's what I'm saying. That's why you have the tool that points out what is about the two persons dynamic, not
Gotcha.
about management to peer dynamic, not management to employee. Or and then maybe one more thing. I'm sorry, just wanted to add to this. We talk about employees and employment and onboarding. You know, in 2023, these are all hybrid setups. There's it can be a freelancer, it can be a contractor, it can be part time, full time. There's no one employment solution. Whatever it makes the person productive and happy is, that's what the form of employment shouldn't really matter anymore. And then maybe another little kind of gold nugget there, that if you said that the person not going to be as good job because it's not their company, they're not going to be as they're not going to do as nice job. Well, ask what kind of milestone they want to achieve to get equity. 0.5%, 1%, 0.25% equity will do the magic if the person is actually motivated towards that milestone to contribute to your company. So, as a CEO, you just need to know how to utilize people more, how to utilize the maximum out of everyone, but not by squeezing what's coming out of them naturally.
Yeah, indeed. The CEO who squeezes too hard also will find they can't keep good people when they burn them out. A lot of people are, particularly in the era of remote work, I see more and more people who are like, my boss is unreasonable. Whatever, man. I quit. It's like if a bunch of people, my younger siblings and a little younger than them, right in their like late 20s, still working at like a Wendy's, and if they're like, if the boss is awful, they're like, whatever, I'll quit and go over to the Taco Bell next door with the now hiring sign, and I won't even have a gap in my paycheck. Like
Yeah.
there's, if you're a bad manager in a hiring market, it's awful. People leave. Now, right now we're in a tighter market. People will stick around a little longer. But even still, I think your goal as CEO is to get that work out of your people by setting them up properly, right? Good process, good onboarding, good machinery in place to let them do the work for you. And the goal, as it says here at the bottom of the Chiron, right? Be 50% busy as your goal for day to day. If you're up at 80% busy,
Too late.
if it's temporary, like maybe you had, three clients projects show up and they're all 1 month, and then when they're done, you're going to have a breather. Like, okay, okay. But if you're always 80%, 90% busy with no time to take a break or, go have a lunch or, I don't know, take a day, go to the doctor's office, whatever. Like, if you don't have time, you need help. The goal should be day to day. 50% busy to me means probably 5, 6 solid hours of work, right? Like that's a good day. When you got the morning in, you're drinking your coffee, you got a lunch break, and maybe in the afternoon you kick out 4:25 instead of 5. Like you get a little time in your day, right? Like that is a good level of, you're working, you're achieving things, you're making your goals happen, but you're not wearing yourself out. All right, Tomas.
Exactly. Maybe one
This is a
more
good.
thing came to my
Yes, sir.
mind. There's this saying that people don't leave companies, people leave managers.
Yeah.
That's really true. So So if you're looking at the dynamic between your colleagues and making sure that they work out well, then they will likely to stay together. And that's actually the key here that you try to create in an organization. And there are many tools out there to facilitate this onboarding, facilitate their learning from each other, facilitate so they can create a mentoring culture that you feel that you belong somewhere. That is actually very important in a remote culture, that you need to feel that you belong. And that's what I think why we can help companies that want to scale in a hybrid or remote setup with Trevor. And good to talk to you about these kind of topics.
Yeah, interesting chat. Hopefully, some people listening found it useful. This is definitely a bit to the side from my usual founder launch go to market, but I think it is instructive for people who are in the nitty gritty of making it happen every day. Thank you for your time as always, Tomas. Where do people find you online if they want to talk to you?
Thanks for asking. On LinkedIn slash T Holzer is probably the easiest. And look forward to answer any questions that people may have.
Awesome. All right. And you can always find me online. Of course, if you're listening to this, you probably already are connected to me, but I am online at Trevor Longino on Twitter, linkedin.com/in Trevor Longino on LinkedIn, and at crowdtamers.com. Thanks for the time this afternoon, Tomas. See you next